Hi everyone, my name's Laura and I'm the Carpe Diem Stitcher. Welcome to my channel if you're new and welcome back if you're an existing subscriber. So today I thought I'd do a little bit of a different video. I wanted to talk to you about 10 things I wish I'd known, not necessarily at the beginning of my sewing journey, but certainly earlier than I found them out. So let's get started. I've got some notes, so apologies if I keep looking down. And I've actually split these into 3 different categories, if you like, maybe 4. So I thought I'd talk you through them each in turn. And the first is techniques. And interestingly, when I decided I was going to do this video, I thought I'd have a look and see if anybody else had done something similar recently, because I didn't want to come online and go, oh, blah, 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 and then discover somebody else had said exactly the same. So I did find a video recently and it's called I Wish I Knew These 10 Things When I Started Sewing, and it's by Seamwork. So I'll pop a link to that down below. And I watched it, and actually the things that they talk about totally different from the things that I'm talking about, so all fine. But it's a useful jumping off point, because the first thing they say, or one of the things they say, which I agree with to a degree, is make sure you read the pattern through before you start, and make sure that you follow the pattern designer's instructions, because obviously they know what they're doing, so they know how this pattern's meant to work. And I agree to a point, but one of the things I wish I'd known when I first started is that there's very often more than one way to do things, and there's often a different order of things that you can do. So, for example, when I realised this, I bought a Stitch Sisters video about sewing shirts, which I've mentioned before, and I'll link it down below. And the order of construction that they use in that video is completely different to the one used in the pattern. So I ignored the pattern and followed the video. And I think, yes, so I just think don't be too caught up in saying, oh, the pattern designer says I've got to do it like this, so I'm going to do it like this. If it's a way that you find easier, then do that instead. And it's interesting because there's also this book, which I've shown you before, which is Barbara Emodi, and it's called Stress-free Sewing Solutions, and it's a no-fail guide to garments for the modern sewist. And the premise of the book is, this is what you do when you've actually followed the instructions to the letter and then it's still gone wrong. So proof positive that there are lots of different ways of doing things. So I would say, yes, have a look at the pattern. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, there's lots of different resources, and I think we all learn in different ways. So have a look on YouTube. I've learned just about all my sewing out of YouTube and books, and also, yes, sometimes patterns, but I've never been on a live course. I'd quite like to go to a live class, but I've downloaded quite a lot of tutorials that I've paid for as well. And, you know, really it's kind of what works for you, but don't feel you've got to follow the pattern instructions if you can't make head nor tail of them, or you find something else easier. As long as the end result is what you want, then I think that's fine. And I think the other thing just to say is that the sewing community is really helpful on Instagram. So if you get stuck, you got a question, just ask it and somebody is bound to help you out. So that's my first tip that I wish I'd known earlier. Second thing is I've just grouped this together and called Get It Taped. So I think there's lots of occasions when a bit of sticky tape can really help, and there's different types of tape for different tasks. So one of the things that a friend put me wise to very early on was, well, it's what Prim call wonder tape, but I use it so much I've now bought it in bulk from Amazon, and I'll put the link to this down below. None of my links are affiliate links or anything, but this is like a double-sided adhesive tape which you iron on. So you would iron this bit onto your fabric that way round and iron it over the top of this, And then when it's warm, this bit peels off and is also adhesive. So it's brilliant for doing things like hems. I use it all the time when I'm sewing hems, because it's much easier than then having to have pins when you're going around and trying to sew, particularly on something like a cover stitch where the presser foot is really quite big and quite bulky. So I use that all the time. I love it. And you can also use it for things like putting in zips. So it's basically a really good way of getting things to stay where you want them to stay. And then when you put it in the wash, it just dissolves. So it's really good. So that's Get It Taped part 1. Get It Taped part 2, I only discovered much more recently. So this and the next Get It Taped, I discovered from watching a video by Lauren Guthrie of Guthrie Garney. So I'll link that video down below. But this is iron-on interfacing, but just really narrow strip of it, so that when you're sewing, when you're stabilising your shoulders on jersey fabric. I used to sew in pieces of ribbon, and sometimes I have tried clear elastic, but I find that if I do that and I try to sew the shoulder seams directly at the same time on my overlocker, I really struggle, and it tries to eat the ribbon and all that kind of stuff. So yes, sometimes I've zigzagged ribbon in using my sewing machine and then gone to the overlocker. But actually, if you don't mind paying a little bit of extra money, you can get this narrow tape of interfacing, which works in exactly the same way. And of course, the other thing you could do is keep your scraps. So I've got a load of scraps here from things that I've been cutting out recently. Is just keep your scraps and make your own, because obviously you don't need very much just to stabilise a shoulder seam. So yes, iron-on interfacing on shoulders, for me, bit of a game changer. And then the third type of tape, which I've not actually used yet, but will be on the wrap dress wearable toile that I'm making, in the hope of making a wrap dress to wear to the wedding I'm going to. I'm cutting out the toile at the moment, is this stuff. So this is... I've lost the card now, but it's called something like forming tape, I think. And this is for stabilizing those areas like necklines and like the wrap on a wrap dress, on a garment, where normally you would use stay stitching. So if you don't like stay stitching and you want to save yourself a little bit of time, you can use this instead. So I haven't tried it yet, but if you look at it, you can see it's got this stitching already built into it. So you just iron that on, and that will keep your fabric from stretching out. So as I say, I'll report back on that, but I'm going to try that on my wrap dress, which seems to have got many, many bits that will require stabilising. So that's the third bit of Get It Taped. A couple more tips in general before I move on. Sticking with the iron-on tape point and interfacing in general, I have on occasion christened my ironing board with interfacing, and I've done that either because the interfacing has somehow slid off the edge of the fabric, and so when I've been ironing it on, I've managed to get interfacing down the edge and it's stuck to the ironing board. To stop it getting on your ironing board, use greaseproof paper. So just pop some of that on top of your ironing board, then iron your interfacing on top of that, and it then doesn't stick. That again for me has saved me the odd tear since I found out about it. So yes, use greaseproof paper when you're applying your interfacing. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention generally about techniques is, and irons actually, is that when you're ironing your fabric ready to cut it out and to sew, if you're using something like a slippy viscose, which I am in the case of my toile for the wedding dress, you can stabilise it a bit by putting starch on it as you iron, so just a normal spray starch. So just to help you see the difference, here is a piece of fabric that you will recognise, and you'll see it again a bit later in this video as well, that I got from Rainbow Fabrics, which is a viscose challis with these cats. Now this hasn't been ironed yet, and you can see it's really floppy, really drapey. Okay, here is a piece from the fabric that I'm making the wearable toile for my wedding wrap dress in, and this is the same fabric. It's another viscose challis, also from Rainbow Fabrics, and this is just a bit that I've kept to one side in case I have enough fabric to make the long sleeve version, which is looking unlikely unless I order some more. And you can see that's been starched, and it's just that little bit stiffer. Can you see? It's just not quite flopping so much. And that's really helpful, and I'm finding it really helpful as I'm cutting out. I'm nearly done with the cutting out as much as I can be. I have a bad feeling I need to order some more fabric. Okay, so those are all my technique things I wish I'd known in terms of just general technique. And then I wanted to move on and just talk for a little bit about overlockers. I've just got a couple of things that I wanted to say about overlockers. So the first thing is that I know a lot of people get quite scared about threading their overlocker. And when I was going to get my overlocker, my husband very kindly offered to buy me one for my birthday, and I actually got one within a year, I think, of starting to sew. And we went off to the shop, and I was wanting to buy one which has the air threader in it. So you basically press a button and it does a lot of the threading for you. And when I got into the shop, the lady in the shop, to be fair, didn't just say, oh yeah, you really need one of those. She said, actually, you probably don't need one. And she showed me how to thread the overlocker that I've got, which is an Elna 664 Pro. And actually I could see, okay, I would need to do it a few times, but it wasn't that bad. So I would say, yeah, if you really don't want the grief, then by all means get an air threader. And I can also see that it would be useful if maybe you don't see so well, or you find dexterity with your joints a bit of an issue. I could certainly see that as I got older, I might end up wanting an air threader. But don't be scared of it. It's really not that bad. And generally, if something doesn't work, what I tend to do is unthread it, rethread it, and it's fine. And I also found, and this is another thing that I found in one of my sewing books. So this is a really old book by Singer. I think it's probably out of print now. It's the Singer Sewing Reference Library, and I got this secondhand on Amazon, and it's called Sewing with an Overlock. And I found in there a trick with the loopers, or rather a point about where your loopers should be while they're threading them, that I found really useful. And since I knew that, then I've not messed up particularly frequently with threading it. So what I'll do, I'm going to insert a clip now of me showing you on my overlocker how to where to put your loopers when you're, or where to put your lower looper when you're threading your upper looper. So I hope that's helpful. So we'll go to 1 hour ago, Laura, and I'll see you in a minute. So I just wanted to show you a quick threading tip for an overlocker, which I found really useful. I didn't know it initially. Maybe some of you did when you got yours, but I didn't. And when I found it out, it made it made threading it a whole lot more reliable. So you can see here, I've got my overlocker so that only the lower looper is threaded. So my thread's coming down here. Excuse the piles of fabric stuff in the background. And everything else is unthreaded at the moment. So my lower looper is threaded, and I have got, I think quite a lot of overlockers have this little diagram which shows you how to thread up the overlocker. And my thread will go, it goes down there through this green. You basically follow the green colour coding from the line, and then it goes through this. And then if I just push that up, you can probably just about see there's a little green hook in there where my screwdriver's pointing, and the thread goes down there, and then it comes up along the back of the lower looper and threads through there. So far so good. So I just thought I'd show you that. Now the trick for making the overlocker a whole lot easier to thread is that before you thread your upper looper, which is just here, which is actually a lot easier in terms of steps. If I go back to my diagram, you come down through the tension dial, which is there, and then all you have to do is you pop your thread through this yellow loop here, and then it runs up through that hook and into the upper looper. Now the trick that I didn't know before is that before you do that, you turn your dial, your button on the side, until the lower looper disappears right back out of sight. And that click you heard was the little hook just disappearing back. So if I just show you again, if you focus on the loopers, you can see there's the lower looper coming across and the upper looper coming up. But before you thread it, turn it right back there out of sight before you thread it. So I'm just going to go and thread that, and then I'll thread my needles, and then I'll show you that hopefully it should be threaded up and stitching. So I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay, so I've got my overlocker all threaded up. Hopefully you can see. I'm going to close up the front of the overlocker because it won't sew if I don't. And ordinarily I'd be doing this with the light off. I'd have switched it off before I threaded it. I've only got the light on and got it switched on because I'm showing you and it makes the light a bit better. But ordinarily you should switch it off before you do this. Obviously switch it back on to try it or it won't work. So hopefully if I now hold these threads, this is a bit of a weird camera angle because I'm sitting to the side, but let's see what happens. If I press the foot down would help, and off I go. And there you see that it's all threaded up and sewing. Okay, welcome back. I hope you found that helpful. So the second thing I wanted to mention about overlockers is having to fiddle a little bit with the settings when you're sewing with thicker fabric. So I wanted to show you a little trick, which again I got from a YouTube video, which I'll link down below if I can find it. And it's all about how to sew fleece on an overlocker when you have to trim off part of the fabric for your seam. So again, we'll go to Laura of an hour ago and have a little watch of how I do that, and then we'll come back. So my second overlocker tip that I just wanted to show you really quickly relates to sewing fleece. So if you've watched me for any length of time, you will know that I have got quite a few Nora tops, the Tilly and the Buttons pattern, made up in fleece, and it's perfectly possible to sew those pretty much completely on the overlocker apart from the hem. And I've managed to do that, but I had an awful lot of trial and error when I first started in terms of finding the right settings for sewing my fleece. So you'll see, actually, I've not changed. I've had a bit of a practice. You see, I just had a quick practice for finding the stitches, and maybe it's not perfect, but it's not too bad. And I've got my needles set on a 3 tension and my loopers set on a 4. I'd maybe mess around with this if I was doing an actual garment, and that isn't the main thing I wanted to show you. But I've widened my cutting width, you can see just there, the end would be a normal cutting width, and I've made it just ever so slightly wider. So that's one of the things I've done. And the other thing I've done already is to change the presser foot weight. So I have pushed it, which way? There's normal. And on mine, if you're sewing heavier fabrics, you push it back the other way to make it slightly less pressured. But the thing I really wanted to show you was that, if you can imagine, so I'm kind of filming this one-handed, is if you were trying to sew that straight away with the knife, there's a real danger that it'll get caught up because it's so thick and it's hard for the knife to get going on it. So I saw a trick elsewhere on YouTube that I'll put a link to the video if I can find it, but I tried it and it is super helpful. And what it suggests you do is that you simply cut out a little notch at the start of your sewing line. So you use that so you can get your fabric in, and so that's then already being pulled through by the feed dogs at the point the knife starts to cut. So I'm just going to make a cut and then I will show you. Okay, so there you can see, if I can get it to focus, come on focus, there we go. I have just literally cut a small notch in the start of the seam, and now I will sew that. So I'll pop you kind of wedged on my knee, hopefully, and then fingers crossed I will be able to sew this and show you what I mean. So if I lift up the presser foot, sorry this is all really awkward because of the way I've got the camera, but if you can see, if I move my hand out of the way, the fabric is pushed in through where the notch is, and then that should mean that the knife will find it a whole lot easier to cut. And I'm sewing at about 5/8 of an inch with for the left hand needle. So here we go. So fingers crossed this is going to work. There you go, you see it's already cutting through and there's no problem with the fabric going through. You can see it is starting to come out there. So hopefully, normally this would be easier because I'd be using two hands to drive it through. It's a bit wiggly, but you can see that the knife hasn't got stuck, and just because you've given it that little bit of a helping hand. To get going at the beginning. So there you'll see. So cut out the bit at the top and then it all continued down without a problem. And you can see, you can, if I put it right, you can see the piece of fabric that's been cut off. So that's how I have learned to do seams on fleece on an overlocker without it jamming up around the knife. Hope you found that helpful. Okay, welcome back. Hope you found that helpful. It's a trick I use all the time now when I am sewing with fleece, when I'm making Noras, and I'll pop a couple of pictures up of some of the Noras that I've made. So the last couple of bits I wanted to talk about, so we're now on tips 7 through 10, are to do with fabric and patterns, and specifically buying fabric and patterns. So feel free to disagree with me because everybody has very different personal views about how and when they buy fabric. And I haven't got the world's biggest stash, I know that, but it is quite substantial, and it's probably got bigger over the last couple of years than it was in the first 2 years of my sewing journey. And that's partly because I can't sew as quickly as I buy. And there's always this tendency to feel that you're missing out. And I think what I'd like to say and what I need to remind myself of is there's always more fabric. And so I think for me, it's really important to remember that and not just to buy everything I like, because otherwise I'll just keep buying. And as I say, I buy the fabric quicker than I can use it. And generally speaking, if I don't buy something and then it sells out, it doesn't bother me. But there is the odd exception. So one exception I can think of is that who was it? First for Fabrics had a kind of really bright multicoloured leopard print jersey, which I saw Kath Craft had used to make. I think she made a kind of leisure suit, and I didn't buy that. And that is one that I really, really, really regretted not buying. So when they then got this fabric in, which I can see over there, so I'm just going to pause the video and go and get it. So I'm back. When they got this in, I did what I normally do, which is I sat and I watched it for a bit and I looked at it for a bit and I thought, do I really need it? And then I could see that the stock was starting to run down, and I thought, am I going to really regret it? Is this going to be another leopard print jersey if I don't get it? And I decided it was, and I bought it. So this is a French terry. You've seen it before, but it is just so me. And yes, I think if it had sold out, I would have really regretted not buying it. So I'd say yes, there's always more fabric, but there is the odd exception. So I'll just show you a couple of others that I've got that I think I would have regretted if they'd sold out and I hadn't managed to get any. So I'll just pop that one down over there. Second one is the one that you've just seen me show you when I was showing you the difference that some starch can make. And this is a really recent purchase, and this is a viscose challis from Rainbow Fabrics. And this did actually sell out just after I bought it. And I can remember noticing that, and I just had this little feeling in my tummy that said, yeah, you did the right thing, because you'd have been really gutted if you'd logged on and seen that it had sold out and you hadn't got any. So I'm really pleased that I got that one. And the third example that I'll show you is one that I bought last year, actually on my birthday, and I saw this advertised on Koala Fabrics website, and that is in Chipping, Sodbury, which is not all that far from me. It's maybe half an hour, 40 minutes drive, a bit more maybe. And it's this really pretty viscose, and I wanted to get this to make a blouse, to make the chalk and notch. I think it's the wren. I've got the pattern printed out actually so that I can get on and make this soon. But again, I just think that's so pretty, and I just quite like the sort of bright colours. And we'd kind of decided we were going to go out for the day, and I think I wasn't going to leave that one behind. So that's another one that I think I would have regretted if I hadn't bought it. Have I bought some that I regret buying? Yes, I'll be honest, yes I have. So one of the ones that I regret buying actually is the one that I showed you. I'll pop a picture up rather than go and find it. It's the one I showed you that we bought when we were in Spain on the cruise, where the bright orange one that I bought to make Steve some shorts. And you might remember if you've seen the video. If not, I'll pop the link down below. As I was showing you it, I realised it's got a dirty mark on it, and no, it didn't wash out. So I don't know if it's oil. I can probably cut round it. What I'm intending to do is I've ironed it and I'm going to lay the pattern pieces out on it. And if I can cut round it, then I won't worry. Otherwise, I might try something like and we did put stain remover on it, but it, sort of all-purpose one, but it didn't work. So if I can cut round it, which I probably can, then I won't worry too much about it. But I do regret buying it because it was expensive, and obviously it had this damage on it which we couldn't see, and obviously because they're in Spain and I'm in Wales, I can't go back and sort it out. So yes, that's one I regret buying. I think, and I'm kind of moving on to my next point now, I think timing is everything, and I think it's really important to avoid panic buying and just kind of wait and see. I'd particularly say that actually, if you're liking Lady McElroy fabric, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but at the moment they seem to be having sales like every weekend. There seems to be something saying 15% off. Of course, I've now jinxed it, and there won't be any sales, but just about every weekend recently now, whether it's because of the bank holidays. The current one is because it's Father's Day weekend, I think. So there's another sale and there's 15% off. So I would say if you can, hang on, see if there's going to be a sale. And I've done that as well with Minerva Fabrics because, you know, I need to renew my Craft Club membership. But when you do, you get a greater percentage off. And I think that's easier to do with patterns because the patterns will still be there generally than it sometimes is with fabric. But yeah, look out for sales. And I would say, moving on to point number 9, look for alternative sources of where you might get fabric. So lots of lovely sewists have de-stashers on Instagram. So alternative sources like, yeah, de-stashers, charity shops. I've bought quite a lot of stuff from charity shops. So my jacket that I'm making for my collaboration with Jess, which is on Olivia, but I'm not going to show you it now because it's getting near completion. So I'm going to wait until we do our reveal. But that was a £15 pair of curtains from a charity shop. I've also bought quilt covers, sheets. I made a shirt out of a sheet. I'll pop a link in here. Picture of it in here. This is a pillowcase, and I have got an entire duvet set in this. So yeah, perfectly good fabric. Who's going to know that that wasn't dress fabric? So very often that's quite a lot cheaper. And you might think about repurposing existing clothing. So I did the remake of a man's shirt into a shirt that fits me using the pattern from Greyfriars and Grace. So I'll link to that down below as well. And you might also have clothes that you don't like, you don't wear, and you could use the fabric from that to make something else. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive. I've also been lucky that I found a lady in our village who was advertising in our Facebook group that she was giving away a load of fabric, and she just wanted to give it away as a job lot without having to sort through it for different people. So I said, yes, please. And that gave me the fabric that I used for my husband's Doctor Who shirt, which I think started life as a curtain. So I'll pop a picture of that up. I'm sure you've seen it recently anyway. And it also gave me enough fabric to do the lining for the jacket, the red lining. So that jacket will have cost me about £15, a bit more. Maybe if I buy a button for it, £20. Nothing really. So that's another way that you might be able to pick up fabric if people are looking to just donate it, pass it on. And also in that stash, that's very nearly my last tip, but I just wanted to show you this other fabric that's in that stash. If you want me to do a video showing you some of the other fabric, do let me know. But I pulled this out last time I went into the stash, and this is a woven fabric, but it's got, which way is it? I think it's really pretty. It's kind of almost animal printy, but not. It's got a very slight bit of stretch in it. I think it's probably a polyester. But I just think it's really super pretty. So I'm just curious. I've got quite a lot of it. So I've got about 2 meters maybe. Is it see-through? Yes, I think it's see-through. So tell me, what do you think I should make with this? Really curious. I'd be really interested to know what you think I should make. I suspect it would look good as loose trousers, something like the Sapphire trousers from Tilly and the Buttons. But I've already discounted that because I don't like the way loose trousers look on me. So, but other than that, open to suggestions. So please let me know what you think. And then point number 10 is really a very similar thing around patterns. So I would say, before you go off and say, oh, I'm going to buy this fantastic new pattern, have a look through your stash. I'm definitely not saying do as I do. I'm bad. I will go out and buy new patterns when I've probably got something similar. But you don't always need to. So have a look through your stash and see if you've got something that you can hack or adapt to make it similar to the new pattern that you like. And also, don't forget free patterns. And I think this is particularly good if you're sewing for children. And I don't have children, but I have sewn for children of my friends. I've made them those little romper suit things. I'll try and pop a picture up here. But I've done those entirely with free patterns and with remnants from fabric I already owned. I think I maybe had to buy some ribbing. So again, really easy, cost-effective way to make a gift for a friend's child without having to spend the earth on patterns when I'm not going to need children's patterns very regularly. So yeah, don't forget free patterns. What I'm wearing is actually the free pattern dungas from Life So Savoury. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link to it at the end of the video, so do go ahead and have a look at that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you're well. Hope you've had a chance to sew. I've actually done quite a lot of sewing, so hopefully next week I will bring you a Friday Sews with a bit more about what I've actually sewn. So let me know what you wish you'd known earlier in your sewing journey. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think of my tips around the overlocker. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do like and consider subscribing if you want to hear more from me. And in the meantime, if you want to find out a bit more about how I got on with my dungarees, making my dungarees, then watch this video next. Bye for now.